There are places on this earth where reality grows thin, like old fabric. Places where ancient forces seep through the cracks of existence and whisper mad truths to those who dare to listen. Blackwood Station was one such place. And when I stepped onto its cursed ground that October evening in 1912, I didn't yet understand that some doors, once opened, never close again. The cold Nevada desert wind cut through to my bones when I first saw the abandoned Blackwood Station. October 1912 had been particularly harsh, and my worn traveling coat barely protected me from the icy gusts. I had been hunting the supernatural for 12 years, ever since a demon in Salem took my wife and daughter, but I had never encountered a place like this. The station seemed to bleed darkness. Crooked telegraph poles jutted from the ground like skeletons of forgotten giants. The sign reading Blackwood, Final Station, hung from a single nail, creaking mournfully in the wind. The air here smelled of sulfur, rotting wood, and something else, sweet and metallic like blood left in the sun. But the strangest thing, the clock on the station building showed 11:47, though the sun still hung high in the sky. "Welcome to hell, mister," came a creaky voice behind me. I turned and saw a hunched old man in a greasy station keeper's uniform. His face was covered with deep wrinkles like furrows burned by the sun, and his eyes were clouded like stagnant water in a well. "Ezra Malcolm," I introduced myself, extending my hand. The old man looked at my palm, but didn't shake hands. His eyes momentarily became completely black, like voids into emptiness, then clouded over again. "I know why you're here. Jedediah Crane, last keeper of this God-forsaken place, saw your advertisement in the Carson City paper. Supernatural hunter. Thought another charlatan would come. He led me to the crooked station building. Inside, such darkness reigned that even the midday sun could not penetrate the dirty windows. Jedediah lit a kerosene lamp, and the yellowish light snatched peeling walls from the gloom, covered with incomprehensible dark stains. But when I looked at the stains more closely— "Tell me," I said, taking out a notebook and silver cross from my bag. "What's happening here?" The old man sank heavily onto a bench and was silent for a long time, staring into the lamp flame. Behind him on the wall, a shadow slowly spread, having no source. "The train comes every night at 11:47, never late, not by a minute for 30 years now. But it's not an ordinary train, Mr. Malcolm. It's the train of the damned." Such horror sounded in his voice that even my hardened nerves trembled. Over the years of hunting, I had encountered vampires in New England crypts, fought werewolves in Michigan forests, exorcised demons from Texas churches. But something in Jedediah's intonation said something worse lurked here. And at that moment, all the clocks at the station struck 11, although several hours remained until sunset. 30 years ago, the last regular train of the Nevada Central Company passed through this station. The train was traveling from Reno to Las Vegas with 50 passengers. Among them was federal judge Elijah Thornfield, a cruel and greedy man. He carried with him a chest of gold stolen from the local Indians. The old man stood and approached the window, peering into the desert distance. But instead of the horizon, something completely different was reflected in the glass. That night there was a crash. The locomotive derailed right in front of the station. Everyone died, or almost everyone. They found the judge alive among the wreckage, but the gold had disappeared. He swore that it was stolen by the Indian engineer named Joseph Crowfeather, said he saw him grab the chest just before the disaster. And what happened to the engineer? I asked, though by Jedediah's expression I already guessed the answer. The lamp suddenly flickered, and for a second it became so dark in the room that I couldn't see my own hand. Thornfield raised a mob. Crowfeather was lynched right here at the station, hanged on that very telegraph pole that creaks outside the window. And before his death, the Indian pronounced a curse, said that everyone involved in his death would be taken by the train of the dead. The wind outside howled stronger, and I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Such stories usually had a grain of truth, even if they became overgrown with legends. But then I noticed that my silver cross had darkened and become cold as ice. The judge died a week later, Jedediah continued. They found him on the rails, cut in half. But the strangest thing, the body lay in the place where the rails had been dismantled 10 years earlier. And the ticket in his pocket was stamped for the last train to hell. I wrote the last sentence with a trembling hand. For some reason, these words echoed with a chill in my chest. And then I realized Jedediah was talking about this judge in the past tense. But if the crash happened 30 years ago...
Since then, that train comes every night. Sometimes it just passes by, black as pitch, with windows glowing with hellish fire. And sometimes it stops.
Who does it take? I asked.
The old man's eyes became completely cloudy, and outside the window, silence suddenly fell. Even the wind stopped howling. Sinners, murderers, thieves, adulterers. But lately, he lowered his voice to a whisper. But lately, it doesn't matter if you're sinful or holy. The train is hungry, and it takes everyone. I snapped the notebook shut and stood up. Show me the crash site. But when we stepped onto the platform, I saw what shouldn't have been there. The sun slowly set beyond the horizon, painting the sky in blood-red hues. I checked my equipment: revolver with silver bullets, cross made of blessed iron, flask of holy water from Lourdes, and an ancient book of exorcisms written in Latin. But when I opened the book, all the pages turned out to be blank. "Leave while it's not too late," Jedediah asked for the last time. "You still have time to reach Carson City." I shook my head. "Too many innocent souls have suffered. It's time to put an end to this." At 11:30, I took position on the platform. The night was moonless, and the stars seemed like cold pinpricks in the black velvet of the sky. The wind died down. Dead silence reigned. Even the coyotes stopped howling in the desert. 11:40, the air became thick like jelly. The temperature began to drop every minute. Breathing turned into white puffs of vapor. 11:45, the distant rails began to vibrate, though they shouldn't have been there. Metallic ringing echoed off the rocks. 11:46, a red dot appeared on the horizon, like a burning coal in the night, and then I realized the train wasn't appearing from the desert. It was materializing directly from the air. And at 11:47, I saw it. The train of the dead traveled on rails that didn't exist. The locomotive was blacker than darkness, with windows blazing with hellish fire. From the smokestack poured not smoke, but something like black fog that swallowed the stars. The train dragged slowly, almost solemnly, like a funeral procession. And in its windows, faces flickered. Hundreds of faces of passengers who died that October night. They looked at me with silent pleading in their eyes. The train stopped exactly opposite the platform. The door of the nearest car opened itself, and grave cold emanated from it. A figure in a conductor's uniform appeared in the doorway, but this was not a human. The creature was transparent. Its skin glowed with hospital whiteness, and instead of eyes, black voids gaped. "Your ticket, sir," it said in a voice that sounded like the screech of iron on iron. I raised the cross, and the creature recoiled. "In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, I command you, return to hell." The conductor laughed. The sound was like the screech of brake pads. "The cross won't help here, Hunter. A different power reigns here."
From the cars, the other passengers began to emerge. Judge Thornfield with a slit throat, women in burned dresses, children with empty eye sockets. They moved silently toward me, stretching out their hands. "Join us," they whispered in chorus. "The last train is already departing." I began to recite an exorcism incantation, but the words stuck in my throat. The air became so dense that it was almost impossible to breathe. The dead passengers approached, and their touch carried death. But then I noticed another figure among them. An Indian in an engineer's uniform, Joseph Crowfeather. His neck was broken by a rope, but his eyes burned, not with malice, but with sadness. "Help us," he whispered. "We cannot find peace." "What should I do?" I shouted, backing toward the station building. "Find the judge's gold. Return it to the tribe. Only then will the curse be lifted." The dead froze a few steps away from me. The train puffed out like a living creature, impatiently awaiting departure. "Where is it?" I asked. Crowfeather pointed to the locomotive. "In the firebox, Thornfield hid the chest there before the crash, thought the fire would destroy the evidence. I ran to the train. The firebox door was open, with tongues of unearthly flame dancing from it. Inside, among the glowing coals, I saw an iron chest, blackened but intact. But as soon as I reached out my hand, he crawled out of the firebox. That same passenger without a ticket, a demon in human guise, with coal-black eyes and a smile that made blood freeze in my veins. And then I realized the terrible truth. This whole spectacle was a trap, and You will not take my trophies, hunter. These souls belong to me. The creature was 3 times taller than me, with claws instead of fingers and a maw full of shark teeth. I drew my revolver and fired a silver bullet straight into its heart. The demon only laughed. The bullet passed through it like smoke. "Silver is useless here," it said, raising its claws to strike. "Different laws operate in this place." And then I remembered Crowfeather's words, "Return the gold to the tribe." The Indian wasn't just cursing the killers, he was cursing the stolen wealth of his people. The gold was the key.
I dove under the demon's claws and grabbed the chest with my bare hands. The iron was red hot, the skin on my palms instantly charred, but I didn't let go. The pain was unbearable, but I dragged the chest away from the train. "No!" the demon howled. "That's mine!" As soon as the chest left the car, a terrible whistle sounded. The train began to crumble like a house of cards. The cars disappeared one by one. The demon writhed in agony, and his screams drowned out even the roar of the collapsing locomotive. The last to disappear was Engineer Crowfeather. Before dissolving into the night, he nodded to me with gratitude. The phantom train continued to disintegrate around us. Cars faded into mist. The massive demon dissolved into shadows and smoke. Supernatural flames and otherworldly light illuminated the final struggle. And then, silence. In the morning, Jedediah found me unconscious on the platform, clutching the chest of gold. My hands were burned almost to the bone, but the doctor from Carson City said they would heal. I gave the gold to the chief of the Shoshone tribe, living in a reservation 50 miles from the station. The old Indian was not surprised. He had long known about the fate of Engineer Crowfeather and had been waiting for this day. The train no longer comes to Blackwood Station. The rails have finally rusted through. The station building has begun to collapse, and the telegraph pole fell during the first storm. But sometimes, passing by on the stagecoach, I hear in the wind the distant whistle of a locomotive. And I know, somewhere in the desert, trains full of damned souls still run, and demons continue to hunt sinners, using human greed and cruelty. My work is not finished. New letters lie in my bag, from towns where something is wrong. Tomorrow morning, I will leave Blackwood and set off to meet new nightmares, because someone must stand between darkness and light. Someone must hunt those who hunt us. And in my coat pocket still lies the ticket I found there the next morning after that night. A ticket with no destination indicated, but with a sinister inscription scratched by a claw. Next train coming soon. I don't know what this means, but deep down, I feel my encounters with the trains of the dead are not over yet. And on the darkest nights when the wind howls in the desert, it seems to me that somewhere in the distance sounds a familiar locomotive whistle, approaching on rails that should not exist.